Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор Дэлхийн банкны Орон зайн мэдээллийн им баг Монголд ажиллаж байна. Энэ багийн дарга нь тэргүүн хадагтай Kathrine Kelm гэж хүн оролцож байна.
Kathrine Kelm Дэлхийн банкны Орон зайн мэдээллийн багийн тэргүүн. Kathrine Kelm нь Дэлхийн банкны Дэлхийн орон зайн төсөл хөтөлбөр хариуцсан зөвлөх багийн ахлагч бөгөөд нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын Дэлхийн орон зайн мэдээллийн менежментийн зөвлөхүүдийн хороотой хамтран Зүүн Аз Номхон далайн бүс нутгийн улс орнуудад орон зайн мэдээллийн нэгдсэн хүрээг хэрэгжүүлэх техникийн тусламж санхүүгийн дэмжлэг үзүүлэх чиглэлээр голлон ажилладаг.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So what is that project about you do in Mongolia? Please tell us.
Yes. It is a global geospatial information management project. And the World Bank, together with the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, have prepared and adopted a framework which we are now working to implement with countries and to support countries in implementing this framework.
So let's start from geospatial information. What is that about?
Geospatial information is basically location. Location. And location is increasingly becoming important because it is an information integrator. We are able to pull together information that is important for the government, for citizens, and for businesses.
And so, okay, there's information. What to do with that? How to get it?
Yes.
How to process it?
That's right. So information management covers a wide range of aspects, and it starts with policy and legal framework. It's about the data and the innovation itself. So geospatial technology is revolutionizing our societies today. And it's linked to e-commerce, to e-government, to e-services. And the infrastructure that is needed to implement better services to citizens, to tackle challenges such as climate change. The information is a new digital infrastructure.
New digital infrastructure. Indeed, we are coming to that era, whether we like or not anyway. But the countries are ready or not is another issue, due to maybe infrastructure, due to several other things, maybe legal limits. And plus now this 5G is coming. They say, our operators say that we will have it in 2-3 years. They are not in a hurry because they have not covered yet the cost for 4G. So provide all these circumstances. So what is the work you are doing and with whom you are doing in Mongolia?
So we are working together with the government more broadly. And we ensure that we are meeting stakeholders across government because, of course, geospatial information is important to every sector. So every ministry and agency. We are working directly with the Agency for Land Management and Cadastre. Okay,
and you said you're working, you are creating, it's UN initiative. So what you do now? Where you are start from, because it's obviously a huge work.
Right. Well, we started at the global level, and we recognize that with the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is this move towards digital information, that we needed a framework to help countries bridge what is an ever-growing digital divide. So at the global level, we have a framework that covers all aspects. I already mentioned policy, legal, institutional, national standards, capacity and education, engaging stakeholders in the process. So we have come in and we will work, the initial week is just doing an assessment of where is the country today in its geospatial maturity, how it uses geospatial information, how it shares geospatial information across sectors, and where priority investments are needed. And we make that assessment by looking at what are the country's priorities, what are the challenges they face in achieving those priorities, what are the investments planned or needed, and then we help the country prepare an action plan and an investment plan.
Oh man, it's a quite big task. First you said, where is the priority, challenges? There are so many priorities in this country, and probably this is one of the least, actually, de facto, prepared country for this kind of revolution, in spite of huge talk in the society, in spite of growing discontent with services, corruption, because this, for example, the Ulaanbaatar city, south of the city, every valley is supposed to be naturally protected area, but they are sold under the table by our government officials. And because this kind of geo information is missing, and we don't know a citizen where and who and to whom belongs a given property. So within these circumstances, your team has been working for other countries, right? Yes. In East Asia, you said. Huh? So where are we compared with those countries?
In fact, I would say you have a very good start.
Okay.
So we have worked here 1 week, and we see that there is a vision and priority areas around e-government, or smart government, services to citizens. And there is already work to bring together services to citizens in a one-stop shop type of service center. That you have policies and legal framework around open data. There's more work to be done, but there is a recognition that open data is an important policy to have. There is a recognition that the land, as you said, needs to be mapped and registered. It is not yet, but there is a vision that needs to be done. And not only private land, but also public land. And it's exactly to be able to make transparent decisions on using land as a national resource and how that land is allocated, and to prevent the conflicts which we have heard about over allocating rights to the land, and some of these issues such as mining rights versus protected lands. And so geospatial information will provide evidence of what is happening. It allows data to be shared between the various agencies, such as the Ministry of Mining, the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Agriculture. It makes the information more transparent, and then decisions can be made on the allocation of land resources.
Can you imagine if all this done in this country, and how much better these people will live? How much this scarce resource can be used effectively? So what's missing? In that you said, it's good to hear that the related agencies has a vision, wish, I understand. But that wish, I don't know to which level it go, actually, because some of the things you talk will make way better the governance. How do you see that?
Well, again, we go back to what is the vision. So we are working with the government to understand their vision. And then we have to look at what are the priority investments that are needed. So ultimately, as the World Bank, we will come in and look at the situation as it is today. And this new global framework helps us with that assessment. And understanding then what the priorities are for the government. And when we talk about geospatial information, that then links to the data that is needed and the systems that are needed to share that data. Then it's the policies in the legal framework to enable that data sharing. So ultimately, we come up with an action and investment plan or a roadmap of what are the priority steps, how are those steps sequenced, and ultimately, what are the investments. And we would start with the available state budget as it is today. Could perhaps certain investments be prioritized over others because they have a bigger benefit? But also recognizing then it's a platform for the Mongolian government to engage with other bilateral donors or multilateral donors on some of the big capital investments that are still needed.
Yeah, we talk about big data. Obviously, the 5G also talking about big data, in particular more investment in terms of the transmission installed. It's going to be maybe at least 10 times more expensive than 4G. Yet we, in this country, very interesting phenomena, questionable, because we have 4 operators, everybody investing for their own infrastructure, and at times hard to interswitch between them. And now there's no talk about more efficiency. Ideally, it should be infrastructure that is used. The company who owns the infrastructure is not to be operator. In this way, we have more economy, right? Economy of scales and more economy. With that geospatial information in 5G, as you see, if there is any country in Asia that has independent infrastructure without operator for use of operators?
I don't have that information offhand. What I can say is that 5G is just one aspect of what we are calling this national information infrastructure and the spatial data infrastructure that is
just
part of that.
Yeah.
That's the infrastructure. But around that then are the policies in the legal framework. And here we need to talk about standards. So that when there are national standards and it allows interoperability, so then it really becomes vendor independent. It allows private sector, academia, and the government to decide the best type of relationship, whether it's a public-private partnership, whether it's government investment, or whether the government decides to leave it solely to the private sector. But that the infrastructure needs to be in place, and then being able to be vendor independent has to have some other aspects in place, such as the standards.
Yeah, this vendor independence will make also total infrastructure cheaper and more efficient, which will be reflected in the price, because not only this geo information will be used privately, and each stakeholders, including private individuals, citizens, right? Citizens, companies, states. Just with your assessments, I hope Mongolia will have a more realistic picture, and most importantly, what you said, the priority investment. If there is any kind of benchmark nations that is doing good in this regard?
Well, I would say each country case has strengths or things they've done very well. So if we look in the region, Korea, for example, is relatively advanced with geospatial information and integration. we look at their smart city programs,
Uh-huh.
moving towards 3D management, management 4D over time. They're very well advanced. Both Japan and Korea now have their own satellites operating, so they are able to use Earth observation and real-time data analysis.
In Mongolia, in the case of Mongolia, we have two types of at least satellites by two separate operators, which enables herdsmen receiving on signal on TV program. Are you familiar with that two satellites? The differences between coverage services?
No, but there would be many because Mongolia would be covered by many satellite providers. So from the European constellations, the US constellations, Japan, Korea, China. So there is a wealth of Earth observation data out there. And also more locally, there's of course drones and the increasing drone industry where suddenly mapping and sensor becomes much more on demand and locally driven.
On demand mapping.
On demand mapping and concentrated in a particular area. So for example, if there's an emergency is unfolding, having drones locally can be sent out to assess what is happening in real time. It can be used later for damage assessment, and then it can be used also to monitor reconstruction.
Well, even it's beyond what we have talked now about the emergency, where we talk about the lives of people,
Yes.
etc. So assessment, when you're going to finish?
We will present our initial findings to the key government stakeholders this week. We just want to ensure that we understand the vision, that we understand the challenges being faced, and what, if our numbers, our socioeconomic benefits analysis, if the numbers seem to be correct, then within November, we will have the assessment to share with all stakeholders. We would like to have it a public document.
Okay.
Again, when we think about the benefits of geospatial information, it's not only government, it's citizens and it's businesses as well.
In particular, it's great for businesses to plan, having in mind that the government is doing this kind of jobs with the World Bank, with professional players. So by November, assessment will be shared. I mean, you said government stakeholders, whom you mean in mind?
Well, we've tried to meet with all of the line ministries, the key ministries, because we do look at the sectors. So what are the benefits for the transport sector? What about environment? What about mining? What about health and education and social services? So we have tried to meet with all of the key government stakeholders, also at the local level. So UB City, what are the main challenges facing UB in managing urban growth, in managing the rural to urban dynamic, trying to ensure that rural areas maintain livelihoods for the citizens and that they have access to services as well.
I see the practicality of geoinformation in terms of herdsmen. A lot cases will be solved. Drones, informations, database for many years. They will can more precisely predict what's going to be look like the pasture land next year or a year after, and all this. Will those data can be will be available? You said public should be available. In which way? They go website? How do you see that?
Well, the government does have plans to have, it's called key registers, so available key registers, so citizen ID, addresses, land and property, tax information, valuation information. And that would, yes, land and property both. And that they are enabling data exchange and system integration. So citizens would have access to that. Specifically, also, the agency is planning what is called a Geoportal. So that the agency has defined that there are 16 fundamental data sets, geospatial data sets.
16.
So everything from land to buildings to the road network to administrative boundaries, for example. So there's 16. And the Agency for Land Management and Cadastre is in the process of developing a geoportal. So it will be one access point that government, businesses, and citizens can go to access geospatial information.
One access point. So where ideally I would know, say, if I need a question about particular property, in particular administrative unit, I can find and I know the information to whom it belongs.
Yes. So in most cases, you would go to the agency's website and they would then have an access point to click and find the information.
I think that's the bottleneck where not every officials would be willing to do so. For example, I keep asking, who owns those buildings in the south of the road to the airport? We call it the Yarmak. There was an empty place recently, and it is given now to whom we don't know, in spite of demand, questions. I asked Ministry of Environment, who controls the land south of the bank of the river Toll, the others in the north. It's crazy. These people really playing with us, and as a result, without any monitoring, without any information, they are misusing properties in land. That's where the corruption is. So I really, as a citizen, very much interested to successful implementation of your project, and will be very happy at each stage, if needs, we can provide information to public so they have a support. Because at the end, it's our life, right? Question. Okay, all this information ideally is there, everything is there, and everybody wants to know they can get it, but how about privacy?
So this is an important question. Each country has to strike the balance between open data, open information on one hand, and privacy, confidentiality, data security on the other hand. And that really is for the country to decide and strike the balance on its own.
Oh my goodness, that's going to be a problem. What is the best case where that balance is struck?
That really depends on the culture and the society. We certainly, as the World Bank, are able to provide case examples from other countries, how they have struck the balance. But ultimately, Mongolia has to decide for itself what is the best balance.
I think it is to go together with what's your assessments. I don't know whether World Bank will consider that, but ideally, you also look at this aspect of data, of the balance in the equation. Okay, here you work about all this data being available, coordinated, used, etc. But on the other hand, that's our concern. A lot of political cases, in particular, such a young democracy, even the mature democracy in the U.S., let's look at what's happening.
Yes.
So how about this young democracy? And it can cost life, somebody's, and which was the case before here a long time ago when first cell phone come over. There was also that security and breach, etc. Okay, interesting. Assessment will be done. Then what happens in November? So after November, say everything goes ideally. Next.
Well, I guess it's up for the government to decide what to do. I think we will be able to show what we would call quick wins, things that maybe don't take so much money or investment, but which could bring about some big benefits. So, for example, completing the geoportal and at least allowing people to access the maps that are currently available. We would look then at some of the policies that are maybe incomplete or might need to be updated, or where there needs to be a balance struck between them. The legal framework, especially moving towards digital data and services, may need to be reviewed again. Certainly capacity in education, that's something we haven't talked about yet. So what needs to be done to upgrade the skills of workers so they can work and manage and use geospatial information? The education system, are the schools preparing students for the right types of jobs? This new digital age and using maps and geospatial information on a day-to-day basis. And of course then partnerships, because if you think about innovation and creating new jobs, the private sector needs to be involved. The private sector is very much leading innovation in the geospatial industry today. So there needs to be partnerships developed and innovation centers or incubation hubs, academia, research. So it's important to bring the partnerships together to discuss what is the state today and what is the vision for the future.
We talk about brand new dynamics, brand new sectors, and yet this government is not ready with the old one, which is going to be replaced in this way. Now will be a couple brand new services. No need to go anywhere to prove that you are you know. You are not criminal, you have some money, and you have a normal person. Here, that's all things. So, but I'm a little bit critical, but things are moving in this country slowly. But for example, our ID, just for your information, probably you have all this information, but our ID has small chip. That chip's supposed to give all the information by this time. It's already 20 years or so, this chip. But yet the government agencies are asking questions related to that chip. I mean, if you are a government agency, you know who am I, and you know even my behavior by that time. It's already, at least these operators have. They exactly know what I see, what I look, what I buy. So and you are right about the education, the people knowing, understanding, supporting this kind of. So towards that directions, what do you do usually as a World Bank for education and capacity building?
Well, we try to look at programs and investments and projects holistically. So it's not just about the data in the systems. You need to think about the people. You need to think about the usage. Geospatial technology and digital technology is moving so quickly. How does the government keep up with it? And every country is facing that challenge. Mongolia is not alone. But one of the initial starts is just ensuring that those fundamental data sets, so Mongolia has defined 16, they actually need to be completed. They need to be accurate and up to date. They need to be geo-referenced so that it can, and the information can be interoperable. That in of itself is a big investment over the next 5 years that still needs to be completed. So I think that's going to be our starting point, is ensuring the data, the systems, the ideas are there, the capacity is there.
How about hacking?
Okay. Cybersecurity is one of the big areas that needs special attention. And again, and cybersecurity, again, it's not just about the data and technology, it's about processes and it's about people. So the country does need to have a cybersecurity policy and it needs to be implemented at all levels.
Will you have assessment in that regard?
Yes, we won't go in depth, it won't be a deep dive, but cybersecurity, data protection is always something
It would be
we look
good if you mentioned that part as much as you can in our privacy, protection of private information and the cybersecurity. I think this aspect that concern for people. Anyway, it's very big issue and very long issue. And how many people work, by the way, in your team now?
We are a team of 4.
4. Who are they?
Well, we have Miss Leslie Arnold. So she is from Australia and actually was the director of one of Western Australia Cadastre Agency.
Well, okay.
We have Mr. Andrew Coote, who has worked in both the government and the private sector.
Which country?
In the UK. And he very much focuses on use cases and the benefits. Mr. Simon Wills is an Earth observation expert and understanding all of the technology that is out there. And Mr. Enkbatar is a local economist, so we want to make sure that we bring the economic aspect into it as well.
Okay, well, great team, and I wish your team doing the job what you plan on time, and even I wish more the government accepts and absorbs what we talk about, because these topics you talk about will make revolutionary change in the way government is run, business is run, and the way we live. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
За хүн үзэгчдээ өнөөдөр манай фактоны түүхийн зочноор энэ орон зайн мэдээлэл гэж цоошин төслүүдийг Монголд хийгээд эхэлж байгаа юм байна. Манайд байгаа бүх мэдээллийг судалж байна. Юу хийж байгааг мэрэгжлийн 5 хүн ирсэн гадаадаас ийм судалгааг манай энэ газар зүй кадастрын агентлаг дээр хийгдэж байгаа юм байна. За энэ багийн ахлагч хадагтай Kathrine Kelm оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.